This is the story of how an ancient magical belief, older than written history itself, survived for thousands of years and ended up in one of the most famous fairy tales ever told. The tale of Rumpelstiltskin, first published in 1812 by the Brothers Grimm, contains a secret that connects it to goddess myths from ancient Egypt, Greece, and Mesopotamia, civilizations that existed up to 4,000 years ago. Most people know Rumpelstiltskin as a simple children's story about a strange little man who spins straw into gold, but the tale carries within it two incredibly ancient ideas that shaped human culture for millennia: the magical power of knowing someone's true name and the spiritual significance of spinning thread. To understand why this story has endured and what it really means, we need to look at where these ideas came from and trace how they travelled through time to reach us today. The story itself goes like this. A miller, trying to impress a king, boasts that his daughter can spin straw into gold, which of course she can't do at all because her father simply made it up. The king, naturally interested in gold, locks the girl in a room full of straw and tells her to turn it into gold by morning or she'll die. A strange little imp or dwarf appears and offers to do it for her in exchange for her necklace, and she agrees because what choice does she have? By morning, the room is full of gold. The king wants more, which is what kings do, so he locks her in a bigger room with more straw. The imp returns and this time takes her ring as payment. On the third night, the king promises to marry her if she can fill an even larger room with gold. But now the girl has nothing left to give. The imp makes a different deal. He'll spin the straw into gold one final time. But in return, she must give him her firstborn child, and desperate, she agrees. A year passes. She's now queen and has a baby, and the imp returns to claim what he's owed. The queen begs him to take anything else, and the imp, perhaps feeling some sympathy, gives her a chance. If she can guess his name within 3 days, she can keep her child. For 2 days, she fails, guessing every name she can think of. But on the third day, a messenger reports seeing a strange little man dancing around a fire in the forest, singing about how no one knows his name is Rumpelstiltskin. The queen guesses correctly, and the imp, in his rage, either tears himself in two or stamps his foot so hard he falls through the floor, depending on which version you read. Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm first published this story in 1812 in their collection called Kinder- und Hausmärchen, which translates to Children's and Household Tales, where it appears as story number 55. They collected this particular tale from a woman named Dorothea Wirchmann, a storyteller from Niederzweren, a town near Kassel in Germany, and between 1812 and their final edition in 1857, the Grimms revised the tale multiple times as they did with most of their stories. But here's what makes this interesting. The Grimms weren't writing these stories, they were collecting them, which means these were tales that had been passed down orally for generations, maybe centuries. Contrary to popular belief, the Grimms didn't actually collect their tales by wandering through villages talking to peasants. Many of their informants were middle-class, educated women, and some of the tales actually had French origins, coming from Huguenot families living in Germany. The Grimms were part of the German Romantic nationalism movement, collecting these tales as part of linguistic and cultural preservation efforts, and they were scholars who helped establish folklore as an academic discipline. The stories they collected were much older than their publications, which raises the question, how much older? Folklorists have developed classification systems for stories, and Rumpelstiltskin falls under what's called the Arne Thompson Uther tale, type ATU 500, labelled The Name of the Supernatural Helper. This tale type appears across multiple cultures and time periods, which means variations of this story existed all over Europe and beyond. An English version called Tom Tit Tot was collected by Edward Clodd in 1898, from Suffolk, England, with a nearly identical plot except the imp's name is Tom Tit Tot instead of Rumpelstiltskin. A Cornish version called Duffy and the Devil features a helper named Terry Top or Taraway. Scotland has Whoopity Story, published by Robert Chambers in the 1840s, while Iceland has Gillitrut and Finland has Titalitur. Japan even has a tale called Komebuku Awabuku, with similar elements of impossible tasks. The fact that this same story structure appears in so many different cultures suggests it's tapping into something very old and universal. And when we look at the core elements, spinning and the power of names, we find threads that reach back thousands of years into human history. Spinning thread seems quaint today, almost medieval, but spinning was one of humanity's oldest and most important technologies. Archaeological evidence shows that humans were creating spun fibres at least 20,000 years ago, and by the Bronze Age, which lasted from roughly 300 to 1200 BCE, spinning was absolutely crucial to the economy. In medieval Europe, when these oral tales were circulating, spinning was primarily women's work and economically essential, which meant a woman who could spin well was economically valuable. Spinning wasn't just practical, though. It was deeply spiritual and symbolic. In ancient mythologies dating back 2,000 to 4,000 years, spinning was connected to the gods themselves, particularly to goddesses who controlled fate and destiny. Greek mythology featured the Moirai, known in English as the Fates, and these three goddesses literally spun the threads of human destiny. Clotho spun the thread of life, Lachesis measured it, and Atropos cut it, which meant your life was a thread they controlled. In ancient Egypt, the goddess Neith was associated with weaving and creation itself, and similar concepts existed in Mesopotamian mythology. This idea that spinning was connected to fate, to creation, to the fundamental structure of reality, permeated ancient cultures. When straw is spun into gold in Rumpelstiltskin, we're seeing an echo of these ancient beliefs, because the act of spinning represents transformation of raw material into something valuable, mirroring the ancient concept of spinning raw fate into human life. Now let's talk about the other ancient element, the power of names. The climax of Rumpelstiltskin hinges entirely on the queen discovering the imp's true name, and once she knows it and speaks it aloud, she has power over him and he loses completely. This isn't just a plot device. It's based on a magical belief that existed across ancient cultures for thousands of years. In ancient Egypt, knowing someone's true name was believed to give you power over them, and there's a story about the goddess Isis and the god Ra, where Isis tricks Ra into revealing his secret name, which gives her power equal to his. In Jewish tradition, knowing God's true name, the Tetragrammaton, was considered immensely powerful, so powerful that it was forbidden to speak it, and Germanic and Norse traditions featured name magic as well. This belief was so widespread and deeply held that it influenced how people behaved in real life. Many cultures had the practice of giving children two names, a public name that everyone used, and a true name that was kept secret to protect them from magical harm, because the idea was that if an enemy or an evil spirit knew your true name, they could curse you, control you, or steal your soul. Think about what this means for Rumpelstiltskin. The imp is supremely confident for 2 days while the queen guesses wrong names because he's won. He has the upper hand completely. But the moment she speaks his true name, he's utterly defeated, and in some versions he literally tears himself apart. The knowledge of his name destroys him because, according to these ancient beliefs, she now has complete power over his very essence. This is the 4,000-year-old secret. The tale of Rumpelstiltskin is built on 2 pillars of ancient magic: the spiritual significance of spinning and the mystical power of true names. These weren't just story elements. They were things people actually believed in, practiced, and built their understanding of the world around. The name itself is interesting too. In German it's Rumpelstiltskin, and scholars have debated the etymology, but the most common interpretation is that Rumpel means to rumble, rattle or make noise, while Stilz or Stelze relates to stilt or leg. Roughly translated, little rattle-stilt, or noisy little creature. Some scholars have even suggested it might relate to poltergeist, which literally means noisy ghost, and it's a strange, almost nonsensical name. The kind of name that feels magical and otherworldly, which is precisely the point. Beyond the ancient magical elements, this story has resonated with people for more modern reasons too. In 1976, psychologist Bruno Bettelheim published The Uses of Enchantment, where he interpreted Rumpelstiltskin as dealing with pregnancy anxiety and motherhood, the fear of losing children and the protective instincts of mothers. Modern feminist scholars have found different meanings. They point out the patriarchal themes in the story. The miller essentially sells his daughter's abilities to gain status with the king. The king marries her purely for economic gain because she's valuable for making gold, and she must surrender her child as payment for male intervention in her crisis. From this perspective, the story is about women as property and commodities, and the queen's triumph at the end is one of the few moments of female agency in the tale. She saves herself and her child through her own cleverness. Economic readings emphasize themes of debt, impossible expectations, and the exploitation of labor, because the queen is forced into an impossible situation by male authority figures and must pay an enormous price for help she desperately needs. These interpretations have made the tale remarkably relevant to contemporary discussions about women's labor, economic exploitation, and the cost of social mobility. The cultural impact has been enormous. The tale has been adapted into operas, ballets, plays, and films, appeared prominently in the TV series Once Upon a Time, which ran from 2011 to 2018, where the character was reimagined as Mr. Gold, also known as Rumpelstiltskin, and the Shrek film franchise includes Rumpelstiltskin as a character. There are countless literary retellings and reinterpretations, and it remains a subject of extensive folklore scholarship, featured in courses on mythology, folklore, and children's literature around the world. So why has this story endured? Why does a tale first published in 1812, containing magical beliefs from 4,000 years ago, still matter today? Rumpelstiltskin captures several timeless human experiences. There's the experience of being forced into impossible situations by those who have power over you, the desperation of making deals you can't afford and facing consequences you didn't fully understand, the terror of potentially losing a child, and the triumph of using knowledge and cleverness to overcome a seemingly unbeatable opponent. But more than that, the story connects us to our ancestors in a direct, tangible way. When we tell our children about Rumpelstiltskin, we're passing down ideas that humans believed in when the pyramids were new, when the first cities were being built in Mesopotamia, when writing itself was being invented. We're keeping alive, even if we don't realize it, the ancient understanding that spinning was magical, that names had power, and that knowledge itself could be the greatest weapon. The story has traveled through time, from the spinning goddess myths of ancient Egypt, Greece, and Mesopotamia, through centuries of oral tradition in medieval Europe, into the collections of scholarly brothers in 19th century Germany, and now into our modern world of books, films, and streaming television. The format changes and the interpretations evolve, but the core remains the same. That's the real secret behind Rumpelstiltskin. It's not just a fairy tale about a strange little man and a clever queen. It's a 4,000-year-old time capsule, carrying within it the magical beliefs, the economic realities, and the fundamental human fears and hopes of countless generations. Every time we tell this story, we're participating in one of the oldest traditions of human culture, passing down wisdom, warnings, and wonder from one generation to the next. The thread that began in ancient temples, spun by the hands of Bronze Age craftspeople, woven through medieval cottages and written down by German scholars, continues to be spun today. Like the fates of ancient Greece who spun the threads of human destiny, we keep spinning this story forward into the future, ensuring that the ancient secret survives for another generation to discover.